Hi there, welcome to Bernina Club. It is another bleak, cold day. What are we at? June Bernina Club. Because it's turned quite cold, I thought I would show you how to make these really easy winter hats. Now, you would have got last month's, the last magazine, the Bernina Club magazine with your Bernina Club classes. So this is the book. It is Autumn Winter 2020 was the last book that you had, and inside it had this wonderful hat, and I'm going to show you how to make that. And because I know a lot of you very well, I know that you won't go and make it because you have to go and trace the pattern. So I've done it for you. So I have traced off the pattern, and when you get it with your notes, you have to add 2.5 inches because it didn't fit on the notes. So just add 2.5 inches of paper, and then you're going to cut around your design. So this is for the adult size hat, and you do not need to add seam allowances. So this hat can be made completely on the overlocker. However, I'm going to show you how to make it on the sewing machine today. So you just simply cut around. Now this hat can be made out of recycled jerseys, it can be made out of any sort of knit, it can be made out of polar fleece if you want to make some polar fleece ones. So whatever you like, you can make these hats, whatever you've got at home. So when I showed the ladies this class, some of the ladies, one of them in particular had just put all her jerseys aside to go to the op shop. So she decided to go home and get her jerseys out of the recycling and start making some hats. So one thing I should have put on the notes, which I didn't, so you can see here it says centerfold. So what I should have done is put a mark in the same line as these points here, because this is going to be the fold line, and then you start shaping it. So I'm just going to grab my pen and I'm just going to lay this down, and I'll put my ruler, I will put my ruler on there, and I will just put a mark here, right there. So this part gets put on the fold, and then I start shaping it. Now once I did these, I thought it'd be really cool to make some for the grandchildren. So we've made the pattern smaller. So just on the computer, we've just shrunk it down, and I've added 1.5 inches, not 2.5 inches. And I'm going to do the same thing to this one. I'm just going to put a mark there, because that's going to where I'm going to start shaping it from my fold line. Okay? So you just need to cut one of these on the fold to make a hat. So the first thing I will show you is what we did. You can just go down to your local op shop and you can buy a jersey, or you can have part of a jersey, and here you can see it's had a hat cut out of it. Now this is a beautiful wool jumper, was a beautiful wool jumper, and I think this one was half made, so it was just thrown at the op shop. So here is the hat that I've made, and it's really nice, lovely woolen hat. And the best part about this is this whole hat has just been made on the 4-thread overlocker. Okay? One thing you need to do, so when I was making it, I just overlocked my seam all the way around, and then I had a moment and went, hang on a minute, I need to turn back this part. So you actually, where's my hat? Wherever your fold line's going to be for your hat, you actually only sew to the fold line, and then we're going to turn it through and sew from the other side. You'll understand it when I show you. However, sometimes it doesn't matter. So for this one it did matter. I had to unpick it and turn it back the other way so I didn't see the raw edge on the outside. So that one's all done. But for these ones, I really don't think it matters, because when you fold it back, you're getting that, and that's acceptable, and I just straight stitch up there. So with these ones, when they're folded back, this one and this one, I'll just do a little straight stitch up here and it will hold it, and I don't think it will matter. So they're great hats. So these two hats, I can get 6 hats out of a jersey. So let me show you that jersey. So this is the jersey. It costs $7 at the op shop, and there's 2 hats out of it. And I can get another 1, 2, 3 hats out of that. So I think it's really, really, really good. If you see a fabric that you like, then you can go and make a whole lot of hats out of them. So that's a cheap, for 7 hats it's costing $7. Okay? So for this one, however, we're going to make a child's hat, and you can see I've already made one, because I'm going to put tassels out the top for the little girls. So I'm going to show you how to make a hat out of this. Right. First things first, we're going to use the small pattern. So we're going to use this pattern, exactly the same as the adults pattern, but it's tiny. And I'm going to use this edge as my fold up edge. And I'm fine with it folding up like that because it still looks really nice. But if I didn't like that, then I would stop and sew it. I will stop and sew it the other way because I'd like to show you how to do that. Okay, so we are going to lay our, this was a scarf, right side to right side. Put our edges together, and we're going to lay our hat pattern on the center fold. We don't need to waste so much. We can come over here on the center fold, like that. And here we are. And I will just put a pin in there to hold that. And I know I can see my little curve line there, so I'm just going to use my normal scissors, and I'm just going to sit down so I don't wreck my back. And turn this around, and I'll just chop this off here so you can see, and then I can get that extra bit out of the road. Okay, I'm going to chop off a few of these little tassels to use in the top. So they will be utilised for the top of the hat. And this will make quite a few hats. So, first things first, I'm going to cut my hat out. And remember, this is the fold line here. And I'm going to make this on the sewing machine today because I want to show you how you can do that. Obviously on an overlocker it's a little bit quicker, but I want to show you what we're going to do here because we're going to put tassels on this one. And this one is coming down to that mark to give you the right shape. Okay, so I have now my hat pattern. So that's my hat pattern, okay? So we want our cuff to turn back like this. So I'm going to say 1 inch and I need that and I need this. So I'm going to say maybe 3 centimetre cuff on this one. So I'm just going to mark this so I can stop sewing at that point. So I'm going to mark 3 centimetres from the bottom. Actually, I'm going to do it on the wrong side. And I'm only going to sew to that point. I don't want to mark it too harshly. And 3 centimetres on this side. And that's going to be where I'm going to stop sewing. Okie dokie. So because I'm going to be putting tassels on, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get my tassels and I'm just going to wind them around and around and around and around and around. That looks cute. Okay, so I'm going to stitch this down and I'm going to save this for later. So I'm just going to straight stitch it. So I'm going to put, I'll just use white thread. And I will hold that with a little clip, like that, and I'll just thread up. So I've got actually off-white thread. So always make sure your foot is up. When you're threading, hold your thread all the way till it gets down to the needle, and you won't have any problems with your tension. Then let your foot go down. The needle threader will come down. We'll thread our needle, and then we'll bring it up. Now, if you've got a foot like this that doesn't have a groove in the side, you can simply take your foot off, slide your needle through the hole, and then pull it down if you like. one way of doing it. And I've got my same thread on the bobbin, and I'll just pop that in and click it and put it in the bobbin. So because I'm doing the tassel, I'm going to stop sewing 1 centimetre from the top of each point. Normally I would sew all the way up, but because I want to slip that tassel in, I'm going to stop sewing 1 centimetre before it. So the first thing is I'm just going to zip across here and just put my jewel feet on and just hold these together. I'm just straight stitching and reverse, and that'll just hold those together till I'm ready for it. Always wait for that machine to finish cutting and lift the foot up before you release it. Okay, so there's my little tassel. I could have made it a lot thicker if I wanted. So I'm going to put my right sides together, and I'm going to start sewing these together. I'm just going to pin that one for last. And what you're going to do is you just open your hat up and you just sew each individual petal. So I'm putting 2 together and stop sewing 1 centimetre from the edge. Now treat this like a dart, okay, exactly like a dart. So with a dart, you always start from the base up. You do not need to backstitch it. Oh, actually I'm going to use a 1/4 inch foot and just do a 1/4 inch seam. So I'll just tell the machine I've got my 1/4 inch foot on, and I've got my jewel feed, and I'm going to bring up the bobbin thread because I want to bring it up for my dart. Here we are. Okie dokie. So just go from each petal, you're going from your seam, your folded seam, and you don't need to reverse. And that didn't sound very good, did it? So remember, when you're doing this, maybe to get a little bit of tear away, because I didn't have a bit of fabric behind it. There we are. So don't sew on to nothing, sew on to a bit of tear away, because remember you're working with a soft fabric. So if you ever hear a noise like that, stop and start again. So I'll just clip those threads. So this is a very, very soft fabric, so we need to put a bit of tear away behind there so that that does not happen. Now make sure everything's pulling freely before you start again. So a bit of tear away behind there will stop that from happening. Right, shall we start that again? So just sew, and when you get to the top, about 1 centimetre, if you've got your scissors, you can just lock it off and cut and lift up. Now the beauty of tear away, if you can see here, is now I can just tear this away and it's gone back to my stitching. That's how good it is. So this is a very, very good product to use when you're working with very fine wool or any fine fabric. Get your next 2. I always do the 2 opposite ones. So I've done these 2, now I do these 2, and I'm going to do exactly the same. Put a bit of tear away behind there and start sewing. I need to bring my thread up. It's really good to have your threads up when you are doing darts, because you might want to tie those off. There we go. So I like to have thread at the end when I'm doing darts. So we'll do that one again, the next one again, and we're going to stop 1 centimetre from the end. So 1 centimetre, lock it off. Okay, take your tear away off, and it's held it nice and firm for you to sew. Such a good product. And the thing is, it washes out anyway. Okay, so we've done those 2. Now we're going to join these 2 together, stopping 1 centimetre from the end. Pop another bit of tear away under it and bring my bobbin thread up. So probably I shouldn't use the scissors for this project because I'm having to bring the bobbin thread up. So I don't think I'll use the scissors. Just depends what you're doing. So again, on from the edge, stop 1 centimetre from the ends, and you're joining these nearly together. And see, I want to use it, so I'll backstitch this time, and I will leave my thread on, so I'm not going to cut it, and I'll take my tear away off. You really only need it for the beginning and the end, but it's good just to show you how easy it is. Okay, so now I'm going to do this seam here. Now remember, I'm going to start and stop right here because I'm going to straight stitch this and then I'm going to turn it through and straight stitch on the other side. So when you're doing something like this, say it's a stretchy fabric, what would be really good to do before you stitch it is to stay stitch where you're going to stop and start. So I'm going to put my stitch length on about 1.95 or 2, and I'm just going to do a 3mm seam. So I'm just stay stitching. So just where I'm going to be cutting and restitching, and I can cut this. So basically what I've done is I've stay stitched where I'm going to be turning it through, and you'll understand that in a minute. So that's 1.5 inches up, and I've just stay stitched where I'm going to seam. Okay, take that off. And I'm going to do the same to the other side because that would make it really strong, because you're never sure if some fabrics you're using are going to fray. Okay, so I'm just going to do a little stay stitch down there, and you will understand in a minute why I've done that. I like stay stitching because it safeguards it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew 1.5 inches. I'm going to start sewing 1.5 inches from the bottom here, and I'll just start on here, and I will use my little gadget. Perfect. And I'll just pop a pin in there so I can see where I'm starting. So I'm going to put right side to right side. I'm actually going to forward and reverse at this point, and I'm doing a 6mm seam. Okay, so I'm going to go forward and reverse. And I don't need to put any more tear away on this one because I'm just sewing straight up a 6mm seam. And I'm stopping 1 centimetre away from the end. And I'm reversing, not cutting. Right, so we have got one seam done. These ones are joined together. Now we're going to open it up and join one more together before we put the tassels in. So if this was a fabric that's going to fray, I would put on the number 12 foot or the 12C foot. Now the reason why I would use this is because I can do a double overlock on this. So normally this is made on the overlocker. So if you think this is going to fray, then you would put on your bulky overlock foot and you would do a double overlock. Now the double overlock stitch normally will be stitch number 10 or 12 on your machine, and you can see here's my opening that I'm going to be turning through and stitching the other way. So I only want to overlock from here to my 1 centimetre where I've stopped from the top, these seams together. So I'll just do one. I might actually put a different colour thread on the top so you can see. I'll just put a, don't think I want black, but I'll just put a different colour thread on the top just so you can see what I mean. It's coming off the back. So this is a double overlock stitch I'm using, and I'm using the bulky overlock foot that's designed for piping or overlocking on the sewing machine. So this is if you don't have an overlocker, okay? When you're making a normal hat, you're not putting a tassel in it, so you can just sew the whole thing up. But I'll just show you how this foot works. So I need to tell the machine I've got a 12C foot on. Sorry, a 12 foot on because my 12C foot's at work. And I'm just doing a double overlock. So it's going to go forward and back, forward and back. So it's a reverse feeding stitch. But it will never ever fray. So you can do this on the whole hat if you like, and that will make sure that with children taking it on and off, it's going to be very, very strong. And you'll never see this colour on the right side anyway. So it's a good foot. You can fit quite bulky knitting underneath it. So I'm just going to stop at my stitching line. And I can use my scissors. Right. So what that's done is that has completely overlocked that. So you can do this on the sewing machine. You can see it hasn't stretched it, so it's nice and strong. Okay? Now, these are the last two seams I'm doing, so I'm going to finish one seam. I'll better put my right colour back on. I'm going to finish one seam before I put my tassel in. Okay? Oh, there it is. So I'm just going to finish one seam. And I have got the 97D foot, so I'm just going to tell my machine, let's not break anything. And my jewel feed, and put my cream thread back on. So now we'll sew that last seam, and then we'll put our tassel on. So remember to pull your thread through your needle. And I'm going to have to turn my heater off because I'm now overheating because I put the heater on because it's so cold. And now I'm really, really hot. So I'm going to, you can see I've got 1, 2, 3 darts made. My main seam has been done. And now I'm going to put my second to last dart in. Pop my bit of tearaway behind there. Bring my thread out. You can tie these ends together if you like later on to make them strong. And I'll just sew this one. Oh, make sure you put it back onto straight sewing. Excellent. And clear it. And then go up to the top where you've got your stopping 1 centimetre from the top. And now we're going to put our tassel in. Okay, tearaway is wonderful. Use it all the time, every day. Right, so I have got one seam to go. So now I pop my tassel inside my hat and go all the way up to the top and bring my last seam together. And what I do for the last seam is I go from here all the way over the top. Okay, so I stitch from here all the way over the top. It makes it nice and strong. All right, so remember you've got your little bit of tearaway and you're stitching your last seam. So you'll notice I'm not back stitching there because I always tie those off. Then I'm going all the way over the top. So you can see why you'd want to overlock this to make it nice and strong, but you can do that later on. And I'll back stitch there. Go all the way down to the bottom just to make that really, really strong. Okay, take my tearaway off. Now all that's left to do now, taking your tearaway off, I didn't need to use tearaway for my other jumpers, just this one's very fine. All that's needed to do now is to sew this back in the other way to turn up. So what you actually do, where you've sewn your stay stitch, you're going to cut back to your stitching line, like that. Okay? So I've cut back to my stitching line. I turn my fabric back to the right side and I straight stitch this piece. Can you see that? So here was my stay stitch. I've cut back to my stay stitch. I turn this through to the right side and I'm just going to sew up this bit, putting a bit of tearaway underneath. Okay, so I'm just straight stitching and I will reverse both ends. So lift up your foot, make sure you've got your needle up, everything's clear, and I'm going to straight stitch down both sides. And back stitch, because this is your bottom of your hat. And cut. Cute hat. So I will just cut that thread there and there and cut that off. Now I'm just going to take off the tearaway, and now this will open up and turn back, and it makes a really nice finish on the right side. So what I like to do when I've turned my hat up is I like to stitch in the ditch up the seam. So I've already overlocked that side. So now I'm just going to stitch in that seam, and that will hold that all together. So longer stitch length, just go straight up that seam and back stitch, stitching in the ditch, and that will hold the hat up, hold the hem up. Cute. I will tie off all my threads, but I'll just cut those to show you. And there you have a really cute kid's hat. There we are, and with my little tassel. Okay, so it's not a hard hat at all to make. So that was just making it 20% smaller than the normal pattern. So that's a really, really nice little kiddie's hat. And I'll just show you what I've done on the polar fleece one. So with the polar fleece, I've left the seams just like this because they don't fray. So you do not need to overlock them. But I have backstitched. Okay, the other ones I'll tie it off. I've just backstitched at the seam because it's just polar fleece. Okay, and I've left the bottom plain and then just turned it through, and exactly the same thing. I've just left that raw edge open and just stitched through the middle. So they're a great hat, really, really good hat. So there you go, that is your hats, and the pattern is in your book, but I've given it to you also, and it is Autumn Winter 2020 in your inspiration book. So I do hope you'll make some of them. I think they are really, really quick and easy. So either on your sewing machine or your overlocker, they're just as quick on both. All right, so when you come back, I will be showing you our fabric boxes.